Welcome to Raven Reports. Tonight's story explores the dangerous consequences of taking matters into your own hands. Remember, what you're about to hear is purely fictional. The quiet town of Millfield had always been Evelyn Parker's sanctuary. At 42, she'd built a life here that many would envy. A charming colonial house on Oakwood Lane, a successful interior design business she ran from home, and the respect of her neighbors. But over the past 3 months, that sanctuary had been violated, and Evelyn's peace of mind had eroded like shoreline in a storm. It started with small things: garden ornaments rearranged, a potted plant moved from one side of her porch to the other, things easily dismissed as forgetfulness or the wind. Then came the footprints in the flower beds beneath her bedroom window, the sensation of being watched as she moved around her home, the hang-up calls that began precisely at 10:15 p.m. 3 nights a week. The police had been sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful. Without evidence of an actual threat, Ms. Parker, there's not much we can do, Officer Hernandez had explained, his pen tapping rhythmically against his notepad. Maybe consider a security system, or a dog. Evelyn had installed the security system the very next day, cameras monitoring every approach to her home, motion-activated lights illuminating her yard like a baseball stadium when triggered. But the cameras never caught anything conclusive, just occasional shadows that could have been anything: a neighbor's cat, a deer, or the figment of an increasingly paranoid imagination. But Evelyn knew she wasn't imagining the scratching sounds at her windows at night, or the garden gate she'd definitely locked being found open in the morning, or the growing certainty that someone was watching her, studying her, learning her routines. And she had her suspicions about who that someone was. Alan Mercer had moved into the house directly behind hers 8 months ago, a quiet man in his late 30s who kept to himself, rarely engaging with the other residents of their close-knit neighborhood. There was nothing obviously threatening about him. He was of average height and build, with thinning brown hair and the kind of unmemorable face that blended into crowds. But there was something in his eyes when they'd met at the community barbecue last summer, a lingering quality to his gaze that had made Evelyn's skin crawl. "You're being ridiculous," her sister Catherine had said during their weekly phone call. "Just because the guy's a bit awkward doesn't make him a stalker. Maybe he's just shy, or on the spectrum. You can't go around accusing people based on a feeling." Maybe Catherine was right. But then again, Catherine hadn't seen how Mercer's curtains twitched whenever Evelyn worked in her garden. Catherine hadn't noticed how he seemed to take his trash out at precisely the same time Evelyn did every Tuesday morning. Catherine hadn't felt those eyes boring into her back as she walked from her car to her front door. "I'm coming to visit next weekend," Catherine had announced at the end of their call. "It's been ages since I've seen you, and Lily's been begging to spend time with her favorite aunt. We'll arrive Friday evening. You can show us around town on Saturday." Evelyn had readily agreed. Perhaps having her sister and 15-year-old niece around would provide a buffer, a sense of normalcy that had been lacking in her life lately. Maybe with their presence, the unseen watcher would back off, and if not, at least Catherine would see the situation firsthand. But by the time Friday rolled around, another incident had pushed Evelyn to the breaking point. She'd woken on Wednesday to find her underwear drawer had been disturbed. Nothing was missing, but the items had been rearranged, her practical cotton briefs now on top instead of hidden beneath her prettier pieces as she always kept them. Someone had been in her house, touching her most intimate possessions while she slept. The police had come again, but again found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints except her own. "Are you certain you didn't rearrange them yourself and forget, Ms. Parker?" the new officer had asked, younger than Officer Hernandez and visibly uncomfortable discussing women's undergarments. That was when Evelyn decided to take matters into her own hands. If the police couldn't or wouldn't catch this intruder, she would. She would set a trap. The plan came together with surprising ease. Evelyn had always been detail-oriented. It was what made her so good at her job. She mapped out the most likely entry points to her home, considering the incidents so far. The kitchen door at the back of the house seemed the most vulnerable. It led out to a small deck that wasn't visible from the street, and the lock was older than those on the other doors. Her trap wasn't complicated. She purchased a small portable alarm system, the kind that emitted an ear-splitting shriek when triggered, and positioned it so that anyone opening the kitchen door would set it off. Then she added her own touch, a tripwire connected to a mechanism that would dump a bucket of permanent blue dye onto the intruder. The dye wouldn't cause injury, but it would mark the culprit unmistakably, providing the evidence the police needed. She set everything up on Thursday night, carefully testing the mechanism to ensure it worked perfectly. The tripwire was nearly invisible in the dim light, positioned at ankle height just inside the door. The bucket of dye was secured to the top of the door frame, rigged to tip when the wire was triggered. Evelyn slept better that night than she had in weeks, comforted by the knowledge that soon this nightmare would be over. By this time tomorrow, Alan Mercer would be in police custody, his skin stained blue, irrefutable evidence of his crimes. Friday dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring day. Evelyn went through her usual routine, coffee on the porch, watching as the neighborhood came to life around her. She spotted Mercer leaving for work at his usual time, 7:30 a.m. precisely, and felt a surge of anticipation. Tonight, she would catch him red-handed, or rather, blue-handed. She spent the day preparing for Catherine and Lily's visit, changing sheets in the guest room, stocking the refrigerator with Lily's favorite snacks, and making sure the bathroom was equipped with the fancy shower gel Catherine preferred. Normal activities that felt strangely significant after weeks of living in a state of hypervigilance. As the day progressed, Evelyn found herself checking her watch repeatedly. Catherine had texted that they would arrive around 6:30 p.m. Mercer usually returned home at 5:45. Evelyn would need to disarm the trap before her family arrived, but she wanted to keep it active as long as possible, just in case Mercer came home early with plans to enter her house while she was distracted with welcoming her guests. At 5:30, Evelyn positioned herself by her front window, watching for Mercer's silver Civic to turn onto their street. But 5:45 came and went with no sign of him. At 6:00, she began to grow anxious. She needed to disarm the trap soon, but what if Mercer chose today of all days to deviate from his rigid schedule? At 6:15, she made a decision. She would disarm the trap now, ensuring her sister and niece could enter safely. She could always reset it later, after Catherine and Lily were asleep. Evelyn made her way to the kitchen, moving with the cautious tread that had become second nature over the past months. She reached for the control panel of the alarm system, ready to enter the disarm code, when her phone rang. It was Catherine. "Evie, we're running a bit ahead of schedule. Traffic was lighter than expected. We're about 5 minutes from your place." "Great," Evelyn said, finger hovering over the keypad. "I'm just finishing up some things in the kitchen. The front door's unlocked. Let yourselves in when you arrive." "Actually," Catherine replied, "we're coming up on the back road. It'll be quicker to park on Cedar Street and cut through your backyard if that's okay." Lily's desperate for a bathroom after all the iced tea she drank at our last stop. Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. "No, don't do that. The gate's locked anyway," she lied. "Just come to the front like normal. I'll leave the door open." "Too late," Catherine laughed. "We're already turning onto Cedar, and you never locked that back gate. You told me yourself it's been broken for months." "See you in 2 minutes." The call ended before Evelyn could protest further. Panic surged through her as she frantically punched in the disarm code for the alarm. The small green light blinked, confirming the sound component was disabled, but the tripwire and dye bucket were mechanical. She needed to physically remove them. Evelyn raced across the kitchen toward the back door, her heart pounding in her ears. She had to disable the trap before Catherine and Lily arrived. She could already imagine her sister's reaction if she discovered what Evelyn had done. The judgment, the concern, the inevitable suggestions that perhaps Evelyn needed to talk to someone about her paranoia. She was halfway across the kitchen when she heard voices in the backyard, Catherine's low tones and Lily's higher, excited chatter. They were already at the gate. "No, no, no," Evelyn muttered, lunging for the door. She had to get there first, had to intercept them before they triggered the trap. But as her hand closed around the doorknob, she heard footsteps on the deck, then the distinct sound of a key turning in the lock. The spare key she kept hidden under the potted geranium, the one she'd told Catherine about years ago and then forgotten. The door began to open. "Wait!" Evelyn cried out, but her warning came too late. There was a startled yelp, the sound of the tripwire snapping taut, and then a splash followed by a shrill scream that could only have come from 15-year-old Lily. Evelyn froze, horror washing over her as the kitchen door swung fully open to reveal her niece standing on the threshold, blue dye dripping from her hair, her face, her new white spring jacket. The girl's expression cycled rapidly from shock to confusion to humiliation as she registered what had happened. Behind her, Catherine stood open-mouthed on the deck, her eyes darting from her dye-soaked daughter to her sister's guilty face. "What the hell, Evelyn?" Catherine finally managed. "I'm so sorry," Evelyn whispered, grabbing a kitchen towel and rushing toward Lily. "I was just about to disarm it. I didn't think you'd get here so quickly. I didn't mean—" "Disarm what, exactly?" Catherine demanded, shepherding her dripping daughter fully into the kitchen. "What is this? Some kind of sick prank?" "It's not a prank," Evelyn said, desperately trying to wipe blue dye from Lily's cheek, only succeeding in spreading it further. It's a trap for the person who's been breaking into my house. Catherine stared at her for a long moment, then turned to her daughter. Lily, go use your aunt's shower. Try to wash that stuff off before it sets. Your bag is still in the car. I'll get it in a minute. Lily nodded mutely, too shocked to speak, and squelched her way toward the bathroom, leaving blue footprints on Evelyn's pristine tiles. As soon as they heard the bathroom door close, Catherine rounded on her sister. Have you completely lost your mind? Setting booby traps in your own home? Lily could have been hurt. It's just dye. Evelyn protested weakly. It wouldn't have injured her, and I was trying to disarm it when you called to say you were early. That's not the point, and you know it, Catherine hissed, keeping her voice low so Lily wouldn't hear. The point is that you're so convinced someone's stalking you that you're setting traps like some character in a bad movie. This isn't normal behavior, Evie. Evelyn felt tears welling in her eyes. You don't understand. Someone has been in my house. They've been watching me, following me, touching my things. The police won't help. What was I supposed to do? Catherine's expression softened slightly, but the concern in her eyes only deepened. Oh, Evie, when did this start? After Mom died? The question hit Evelyn like a physical blow. Their mother had passed away 6 months ago after a long battle with dementia, a painful time for both sisters, but especially for Evelyn, who had been their mother's primary caregiver during the final years. This has nothing to do with Mom, Evelyn insisted. This is happening. It's real. Catherine sighed, running a hand through her hair, a gesture so reminiscent of their mother that it made Evelyn's chest ache. Look, I'm going to get Lily's bag from the car. Then we're going to order pizza, have a quiet dinner, and try to salvage this visit. But tomorrow, we're going to have a serious talk about getting you some help. Professional help. She turned and walked out the front door before Evelyn could respond, leaving her sister standing alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of her failed plan. Dinner was a strained affair. Lily, her skin tinged faintly blue despite 30 minutes of scrubbing, picked at her pizza in silence, occasionally shooting wary glances at her aunt. Catherine maintained a forced cheerfulness, chattering about her job at the university and Lily's achievements at school, carefully avoiding any mention of traps or intruders or Evelyn's mental state. Evelyn barely touched her food, her mind racing. She knew how this looked. She knew what Catherine was thinking, that grief had pushed her over the edge, that she was having some kind of breakdown, inventing threats to distract from her pain. But she wasn't crazy. She wasn't imagining the intrusions. I think I'm going to turn in early, she announced as they finished eating. It's been a long day. You two help yourselves to whatever you need. Catherine nodded, relief evident in her eyes at not having to maintain the charade of normalcy any longer. That's probably a good idea. We'll clean up here. Evelyn retreated to her bedroom, closing the door behind her with a soft click. She sat on the edge of her bed, listening to the muffled sounds of her sister and niece moving around in the kitchen, their voices too low to make out the words, but their concerned tones clear enough. They thought she was losing her mind. And maybe she was. Maybe all of this. The moved objects, the footprints, the sensation of being watched. Maybe it was all in her head, a manifestation of grief, as Catherine had implied, or loneliness, or simple paranoia. But the underwear drawer. She couldn't have imagined that, could she? Evelyn got up and crossed to her window, peering out at the darkened yard. From this angle, she could just see the back of Alan Mercer's house. There were lights on in what she presumed was his kitchen, shadows moving behind the curtains. Was he in there right now, plotting his next intrusion? Or was he just a normal man living a normal life, completely unaware of the sinister motives his neighbor had attributed to him? She let the curtain fall back into place and returned to her bed, suddenly exhausted. Perhaps sleep would bring clarity. Perhaps in the morning, she would see the situation differently. But sleep proved elusive. Evelyn tossed and turned, her mind cycling through the events of the day, the humiliation on Lily's face, the concern in Catherine's eyes, the blue dye that would likely stain her kitchen floor permanently, a constant reminder of her failed trap. She must have dozed off eventually because the next thing she knew, she was jolting awake, her heart racing. Something had disturbed her sleep, a noise from somewhere in the house. Evelyn lay perfectly still, straining her ears. The house had settled into the deep quiet of late night, the kind of silence that makes even the smallest sounds seem significant. There it was again, a soft creak, like weight being placed carefully on an old floorboard. It was coming from the hallway outside her bedroom. Catherine or Lily going to the bathroom, she told herself. Nothing to worry about. But then came another sound. the distinct click of her office door opening across the hall. Neither Catherine nor Lily would have any reason to go into her office at... Evelyn glanced at the bedside clock, 2:17 a.m. She slid silently out of bed, her bare feet finding the cool hardwood floor. Moving with practiced stealth, she crossed to her bedroom door and eased it open a fraction, peering into the darkened hallway. Her office door was indeed open, a sliver of moonlight from its window illuminating a thin strip of the hallway floor. As she watched, a shadow moved across that strip of light. Someone was in her office moving around. Evelyn's first instinct was to call out, to confront the intruder, but something stopped her. A primal caution that whispered it was better to see without being seen. She needed to know who was in her house before she revealed herself. With trembling fingers, she retrieved her phone from the nightstand and dialed 911, keeping her thumb hovering over the call button without pressing it yet. Then, moving with agonizing slowness to avoid making the floorboards creak, she crept toward the office. As she drew closer, she could hear faint sounds, the soft rustle of papers, the quiet slide of a drawer being carefully opened. Whoever was in there was searching for something. Evelyn positioned herself at the edge of the doorway, hidden in the shadows of the hall. From this vantage point, she could see a portion of her office, enough to make out a figure bending over her desk, rifling through the documents she kept in the top drawer. The figure straightened, turning slightly toward the window, and moonlight illuminated their profile. It wasn't Alan Mercer. It was Lily. Evelyn's niece was standing at her desk, holding what appeared to be a file folder, flipping through its contents with quick, practiced movements. There was nothing hesitant or exploratory about her actions. She moved with purpose, like someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Confusion flooded through Evelyn. What was Lily doing in her office in the middle of the night? What could a 15-year-old possibly be searching for among Evelyn's business documents and client files? She was about to step into the doorway to confront her niece with these questions when Lily did something that froze Evelyn in place. The girl reached into her pocket and pulled out a phone. She quickly snapped several photos of whatever document she was holding, then carefully returned the file to the drawer, exactly as she had found it. This wasn't idle teenage curiosity. This was deliberate, calculated. Evelyn pressed herself back against the wall as Lily turned toward the door. She watched through the crack as her niece slipped out of the office, quietly pulling the door closed behind her. Instead of turning toward the guest room where she was staying, Lily headed for the stairs, her footsteps whisper-soft on the carpeted treads. After a moment's hesitation, Evelyn followed, staying far enough behind to remain undetected. She tracked Lily through the darkened house, down the stairs, through the living room, and into the kitchen. There, Lily paused at the counter, typing something on her phone. She seemed to be sending the photos she had taken, her face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. When she finished, she slipped the phone back into the pocket of her pajama pants and moved toward the back door, the same door where she had triggered Evelyn's trap earlier that evening. This time, Lily navigated the entry with careful precision, clearly aware of the potential danger. She eased the door open without triggering what remained of the disabled trap and slipped outside onto the deck. Evelyn hesitated by the kitchen window, watching as her niece crossed the yard with quick, confident strides. Not the movements of someone sneaking out for the first time, but the practiced motions of someone who had done this before. But that was impossible. Lily had never been to this house before today. Lily reached the back gate and passed through it without hesitation, disappearing from view. Evelyn stood frozen for several seconds, her mind struggling to process what she had just witnessed. Then, decision crystallizing, she hurried to the front door, slipping on the shoes she kept in the entryway and grabbing a light jacket from the hook. She needed to see where Lily was going, what she was doing, because one thing was now abundantly clear. The strange occurrences in her home, the sense of invasion she had been experiencing, were not imaginary. They were real, and somehow, her 15-year-old niece was involved. Evelyn moved quickly but quietly through her front yard and around the side of the house, staying close to the shadows cast by the large oak trees that lined the street. She reached the back gate just in time to see Lily's figure turning the corner at the end of Cedar Street. Maintaining a careful distance, Evelyn followed. The night was cool and still, the neighborhood silent except for the occasional hum of a refrigerator or air conditioning unit from an open window. Twice Evelyn had to duck behind parked cars when Lily glanced back over her shoulder, scanning the street behind her with wary eyes. Lily led her on a winding path through the residential area, eventually emerging onto Maple Drive, the street directly behind Evelyn's house, where Alan Mercer lived. A sick feeling began to form in Evelyn's stomach as she watched Lily approach Mercer's modest bungalow. But the girl didn't head for the front door as Evelyn had half expected. Instead, she skirted around the side of the house to the backyard, moving with the confidence of someone who had made this journey many times before. Evelyn crept closer, using the neighbor's shrubs for cover. From her position, she could see into Mercer's backyard, where a single light burned in what appeared to be a small garden shed or workshop set away from the main house. Lily walked directly to this outbuilding and knocked on its door. Not the hesitant tap of someone uncertain of their welcome, but 3 sharp raps in what sounded like a prearranged signal. The door opened immediately, spilling yellow light onto the lawn. Alan Mercer stood in the doorway, his thin frame silhouetted against the brightness behind him. Without a word, he stepped aside, allowing Lily to enter. The door closed behind them, leaving the yard in darkness once more. Evelyn stood motionless, her mind racing to make sense of what she was seeing. Her 15-year-old niece was meeting with her neighbor, the man Evelyn had suspected of stalking her, in the middle of the night. And based on Lily's behavior, this wasn't their first meeting. Moving as silently as possible, Evelyn approached the shed. There was a small window on the side, partially covered by a tattered blind. By crouching beneath it, she could hear muffled voices from inside without being seen. "Got everything you asked for?" Lily was saying, her voice clearer and more confident than Evelyn had ever heard it. "Bank statements, investment portfolio, insurance policies. It's all here. Good girl." Mercer's voice was soft but distinct. "Any trouble getting them?" "No, she keeps everything in her office, just like you said. But I almost didn't make it here tonight. You won't believe what happened when we arrived." Lily launched into an account of the blue dye incident, describing Evelyn's trap and her own humiliation in scathing terms that made it clear she felt no familial affection toward her aunt. "She's getting paranoid," Mercer observed when Lily finished her story. "That complicates things." "She's always been weird," Lily replied dismissively. "Mom says it got worse after Grandma died, but honestly, she's been a control freak for as long as I can remember. Always has to have everything just so. Always knows better than everyone else." Evelyn flinched at the contempt in her niece's voice. She had always thought she and Lily had a good relationship. She sent birthday and Christmas gifts, remembered to ask about school and friends during their occasional phone calls. She had never suspected this level of animosity. "Well, her paranoia works in our favor in some ways," Mercer was saying. "If she does eventually figure out what's happening, the police already think she's seeing threats where none exist. They won't take her seriously." "How much longer do we need to keep this up?" Lily asked, an edge of impatience in her voice. "I'm getting tired of playing the perfect niece every time Mom calls her." "Not much longer. I've almost got enough. Your mother's been very helpful, feeding her sister's paranoia, suggesting she might be having a breakdown. The more unstable Evelyn appears, the easier it will be to access her accounts without raising suspicions." Evelyn felt as though the ground had dropped away beneath her feet. Catherine was involved in this too. Her own sister. "I still don't understand why we need all this financial stuff," Lily was saying. "Why not just take her jewelry or electronics or something? Less complicated." Mercer's laugh was soft and condescending. "Because your aunt is worth a lot more than whatever trinkets she keeps in her jewelry box. She's been running that design business for 15 years, investing smartly. And then there's the inheritance from your grandmother. Did you know Evelyn got the lion's share? Your mother only received a small percentage." "What?" Lily's voice sharpened with indignation. "Mom never told me that. Why would Grandma leave everything to Aunt Evelyn?" "Because your aunt was the one who took care of her during those last years, sacrificed her time, her social life, put her business on hold to be a caretaker. Your mother, meanwhile, was too busy with her career and raising you to help out. At least, that's how your grandmother saw it." There was a bitter edge to Mercer's words that made Evelyn wonder about his connection to this situation. He spoke as if he had personal knowledge of the family dynamics, not information that had been related to him secondhand. "So this whole thing is about getting back what should have been Mom's anyway?" Lily asked, sounding slightly mollified. "Exactly. We're just rebalancing the scales of justice. Your aunt has lived quite comfortably off that inheritance and her business, while your mother struggles to make ends meet as a single parent on a professor's salary. It's not fair, is it?" "No," Lily agreed, conviction strengthening her voice. "It's not fair at all. Besides," Mercer continued smoothly, "it's not like we're leaving her destitute. We're just liberating some of her excess wealth. She'll never even notice most of it's gone until it's too late to trace where it went." "And my cut is still 20%, right?" Lily asked. All teenage pretense dropped from her voice, revealing a calculating edge that made her sound much older than 15. "Of course. You've earned it, taking all these risks. Not many kids your age would have the nerve to do what you've done." What about the trap situation? Should we be worried about that? Mercer was quiet for a moment, considering. No, I think it works in our favor. It makes her look even more unstable. But we should move quickly now. I've got almost everything I need to access her accounts remotely. One more visit to her office should do it. I can go back tonight after Mom falls asleep again. She takes those sleeping pills. She's out cold until morning. No, too risky. If Evelyn caught you once, she might be watching more carefully now. Wait until tomorrow night. I'll create a distraction that will get Evelyn out of the house. Then you can get what we need without worrying about interruptions. What kind of distraction? Leave that to me. I've been watching her long enough to know exactly what will draw her out. The casual confirmation that Mercer had indeed been watching her, studying her patterns and behaviors, sent a chill down Evelyn's spine. She hadn't been paranoid after all. The sensation of being observed, the small disturbances around her home, they had all been real. But the culprit wasn't Mercer alone. It was a conspiracy involving her own family, her sister and niece working with this stranger to steal her inheritance and savings. There's one more thing, Mercer was saying, his tone shifting to something harder, more businesslike. I need you to plant this in your aunt's bedroom tomorrow. Somewhere it won't be found immediately, but where it will eventually be discovered. Through the gap in the blinds, Evelyn could see him hand Lily a small plastic bag containing what looked like a clump of dark hair. What is this? Lily asked, wrinkling her nose as she accepted the bag. Insurance, Mercer replied cryptically. Just in case things don't go according to plan. Hide it well. Under the mattress or behind the headboard. Somewhere not obvious. Lily nodded, tucking the bag into her pocket alongside her phone. I should get back before Mom wakes up and notices I'm gone. She's been sleeping badly lately. Keeps saying she feels guilty about something. I think she's having second thoughts about all this. Remind her what's at stake, Mercer advised. Remind her of all those years she struggled while Evelyn lived comfortably. Remind her of the tuition bills coming up when you start college. This is her chance to secure your future. Surely that's worth a little deception. I'll handle Mom, Lily assured him with a confidence that seemed grotesquely out of place in a teenager discussing the manipulation of her parent. See you tomorrow night. Same time. Same time, Mercer confirmed. And Lily, make sure you aren't followed next time. I thought I saw a shadow moving near the Hendersons' place when you arrived. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She shrank back against the side of the shed, hoping the darkness would conceal her. Probably just a cat, Lily said dismissively. No one followed me. Mom's asleep and Aunt Evelyn went to bed hours ago. She looked like she was about to have a nervous breakdown after the blue dye thing. Totally pathetic. The casual cruelty in her niece's voice was like a physical blow. Evelyn had always thought of Lily as a sweet, somewhat shy girl. To hear her speak with such contempt, such calculated malice, was disorienting. Nevertheless, be careful, Mercer insisted. We're too close to success to get sloppy now. Evelyn heard movement inside the shed. They were preparing to leave. She needed to get back to her house before Lily. Needed time to think, to plan her next move. Moving as quickly as she dared while still maintaining silence, Evelyn retraced her steps through the neighboring yards, taking a roundabout route back to her own home to ensure she wouldn't cross paths with Lily. She slipped in through the front door, locking it behind her, then moved swiftly through the darkened house to her bedroom. Only when she was safely inside with the door closed did she allow herself to process what she had discovered. Her sister and niece were conspiring with her neighbor to steal her money, not just in a straightforward burglary, but through an elaborate scheme involving identity theft and electronic access to her accounts. They had been systematically gathering her financial information, planning to drain her resources remotely in a way that would be difficult to trace. And there was something else, something about the plastic bag of hair that Mercer had called insurance. What purpose could that possibly serve? The word conjured ominous possibilities in Evelyn's mind. She sat on the edge of her bed, her thoughts racing. She needed evidence. The police hadn't believed her about the intruder. They certainly wouldn't take her word about this conspiracy without proof, especially when the conspirators included her own family members, who would undoubtedly paint her as paranoid and unstable, a narrative they had already begun constructing. Evelyn glanced at her bedside clock. It was nearly 3:30 a.m. She had perhaps 15 minutes before Lily returned to the house. Not much time to formulate a plan, but enough to take the first crucial step. Moving quickly but quietly, she retrieved her laptop from her bedside table and powered it on. The blue light of the screen harsh in the darkness of her bedroom. She navigated to her bank's website and logged in, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Within minutes, she had changed all her passwords and security questions. enabled two-factor authentication on every account, and placed temporary freezes on her credit cards. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it would buy her time, make it harder for them to access her finances while she gathered evidence. Next, she opened her phone's camera app and positioned it on her dresser, angled toward her bedroom door. She set it to record video, then slipped back into bed, pulling the covers up to make it appear she was sleeping. She had barely settled when she heard the faint sound of the back door opening and closing, followed by the soft pad of footsteps on the stairs. Lily was back. Evelyn forced her breathing to remain deep, and even as she heard her niece pause outside her bedroom door, there was a moment of complete silence, then the subtle creak of the door being eased open a fraction. Evelyn kept her eyes closed, her body still, as she sensed Lily peering into the room, checking to see if her aunt was asleep. Apparently satisfied, Lily pulled the door closed again. Evelyn heard her footsteps continue down the hall to the guest room, followed by the quiet click of that door closing. Only then did Evelyn release the breath she had been holding. She rose silently and retrieved her phone, stopping the recording and checking to ensure it had captured Lily's brief surveillance. It had, a shadowy but recognizable image of her niece peering around the edge of the door. It wasn't much, but it was a start, proof that Lily was moving around the house at night, checking on Evelyn's whereabouts. Combined with whatever evidence she could gather tomorrow, it might be enough to convince the police that her concerns were legitimate. Evelyn returned to bed, though she knew sleep would be impossible now. Her mind was too busy formulating a plan, not just to defend herself against the conspiracy, but to turn the tables on her would-be betrayers. They thought they were setting a trap for her. They didn't realize that she was now setting one for them. Morning arrived with painful brightness, sunlight streaming through the gaps in Evelyn's curtains to illuminate a room that felt fundamentally changed from the day before. Everything looked the same. The familiar furniture, the framed photographs on the dresser, the stack of interior design magazines on the nightstand, but Evelyn viewed it all through new eyes. Those photos included images of Catherine and Lily, smiling faces that had once represented family and security, now revealed as masks concealing betrayal. The magazines contained articles Evelyn had bookmarked about home security after the first signs of intrusion. Intrusions she now knew had been orchestrated by her own niece. She had dozed fitfully for perhaps an hour before giving up on sleep entirely. The rest of the night she had spent planning, analyzing every angle of the situation, considering her options. By the time she heard movement in the guest room, Catherine and Lily awakening, Evelyn had formulated a strategy. She would play along, pretend she suspected nothing, let them think their plan was proceeding smoothly while she gathered evidence and prepared her countermove. Evelyn rose, dressed, and headed downstairs to start breakfast, schooling her features into an expression of normalcy despite the turmoil churning inside her. She was whisking eggs when Catherine entered the kitchen, looking rumpled and tired. "Morning," her sister yawned, heading straight for the coffee pot. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," Evelyn replied truthfully, keeping her tone light. "Thought I'd make breakfast for everyone." "Where's Lily?" "Still in bed. Teenagers, you know. She'll probably sleep till noon if we let her." Evelyn bit back the urge to say she knew exactly why Lily might be tired this morning. Instead, she nodded and returned to her cooking. "I was thinking we could go into town today. Show you and Lily around. There's a nice farmer's market on Saturdays." Catherine poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter. "That sounds nice. But Evie, I think we should talk about what happened yesterday. About the trap and everything else." Evelyn tensed but kept her face neutral as she poured the eggs into a heated pan. "I know how it looked, but Catherine, I wasn't imagining things. Someone has been in my house." "I believe that you believe that," Catherine said carefully, the kind of diplomatic phrasing therapists used. "But sometimes when we're under stress or dealing with grief—" "This isn't grief," Evelyn interrupted, then immediately moderated her tone. Getting defensive would only reinforce Catherine's perception of her as unstable. "But I understand your concern. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should talk to someone professional." The concession clearly surprised Catherine, who blinked and took a moment to respond. "Really? You'd be willing to do that?" "Of course," Evelyn said, stirring the eggs with deliberate focus. "If it would make you feel better. In fact, I was thinking of calling Dr. Levine on Monday. Remember him? He helped me a lot after Dad died." Dr. Levine was a therapist Evelyn had indeed seen briefly following their father's death 10 years earlier. Mentioning him served two purposes. It made her apparent capitulation more believable, and it reminded Catherine that Evelyn had a history of seeking help when she needed it. undermining the narrative that she was in denial about her mental state. That's great, Evie, Catherine said, relief evident in her voice. I think it would really help. And in the meantime, maybe you could stay with us for a while, just until you're feeling more secure. The suggestion was so perfectly aligned with what Mercer had said about getting Evelyn out of the house that she nearly laughed. Instead, she kept her expression thoughtful. Maybe, let me think about it. I'd have to arrange for someone to look after the house, handle my client meetings. Of course, Catherine nodded, clearly pleased that Evelyn wasn't rejecting the idea outright. No rush, just something to consider. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lily, shuffling into the kitchen with an impressive performance of teenage grogginess. Her hair was tousled, her eyes heavy-lidded with apparent sleep. If Evelyn hadn't seen her fully alert and articulate just hours ago in Mercer's shed, she would have been completely convinced by the act. "Morning, honey," Catherine greeted her daughter. "Aunt Evelyn's making breakfast." Lily mumbled something unintelligible and dropped into a chair at the kitchen table. Evelyn noted how carefully the girl avoided making eye contact with her, not out of obvious guilt, but in a way that could easily be interpreted as lingering embarrassment over the blue dye incident. "How are you feeling this morning, Lily?" Evelyn asked, placing a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her niece. "I'm so sorry again about yesterday. I hope you know I never meant for you to get caught in that thing." Lily shrugged, picking up her fork. "It's fine. Most of it washed out. Mom says you're going through some stuff." The dismissive tone, the subtle reinforcement of the unstable Aunt Evelyn narrative. It was also calculated that Evelyn had to marvel at her niece's acting abilities. The sweet, shy girl Evelyn thought she knew had never existed. "I am," Evelyn admitted, serving Catherine and herself before joining them at the table. "But I'm going to get help. Your mom's convinced me to see someone." Lily's eyes flickered up briefly, a flash of calculation visible before she ducked her head again, focusing on her breakfast. "That's good, I guess." The rest of breakfast passed in strained small talk. Catherine did most of the conversational heavy lifting, chattering about neighbors back home and faculty politics at the university where she taught. Evelyn responded appropriately, laughed at the right moments, and pretended not to notice how Lily was studying her when she thought Evelyn's attention was elsewhere. After breakfast, they did indeed go into town, as Evelyn had suggested. She guided them through the farmer's market, pointing out local landmarks, introducing them to shopkeepers she knew. Throughout it all, she maintained the facade of a woman who might be struggling, but was making an effort to pull herself together. She even made a point of mentioning Alan Mercer as they passed a coffee shop. "That's where my neighbor Alan goes every Saturday morning," she said casually. "He seems harmless enough. I think I've been projecting my anxiety onto him, seeing threats where there aren't any." Catherine squeezed her arm encouragingly. "That's really insightful, Evie. Self-awareness is the first step toward healing." The patronizing tone made Evelyn's teeth clench, but she forced a grateful smile. "I'm trying." As they walked back to the car with their purchases, Evelyn deliberately dropped back a few paces, pretending to admire a display in a shop window. In that moment, she saw Catherine and Lily exchange a significant look, a silent communication that confirmed they were indeed conspirators. By the time they returned to the house, it was mid-afternoon. Evelyn suggested they all relax for a while before dinner. "I've got some client emails to catch up on," she explained. "Why don't you two make yourselves comfortable? Remote's on the coffee table if you want to watch TV, and there are books in the den." In her office, door closed but not locked. That would appear suspicious. Evelyn began implementing the next phase of her plan. She opened her laptop and navigated to the website for a local security company. With a few clicks, she arranged for emergency installation of additional cameras, ones that would be delivered and set up that very evening, taking advantage of the company's weekend service premium. Next, she called Officer Hernandez, the policeman who had responded to her initial reports of intrusion. She kept her voice low, mindful of being overheard. "Officer Hernandez, this is Evelyn Parker. I need to speak with you about a sensitive matter. Would it be possible for you to come by my house tonight, around 9 o'clock? There was a pause on the line. "Ms. Parker, if you're experiencing another break-in, you should call 911, not my direct line." "It's not that," Evelyn said quickly. "At least, not exactly. I've discovered some information about the intrusions I reported. Information that might change your perspective on the situation. Please, it's important." Something in her tone must have conveyed her sincerity, because after another moment's hesitation, Officer Hernandez agreed. 9 o'clock. "But Ms. Parker, if this is about rearranged plants or footprints in the garden again." "It's not," Evelyn assured him. "This is concrete evidence. And officer, Please don't come in a marked car if possible. I'd rather not alert the people involved that I'm speaking with the police. That caught his attention. People involved? You have suspects? Yes, but I'd rather discuss the details in person. And please, come to the side door, not the front. After ending the call, Evelyn checked the time. Nearly 4:30 p.m. If Mercer was planning a distraction to get her out of the house tonight, it would likely happen soon. She needed to be prepared. She opened her desk drawer and removed a small digital voice recorder she sometimes used for dictating notes about client projects. She checked that it had fresh batteries, then slipped it into her pocket. Then she took a small canister of pepper spray, a gift from a concerned friend after her divorce years ago, from another drawer and tucked it into her other pocket. Finally, she opened a seemingly innocuous weather app on her phone, one that actually connected to the existing security cameras around her property. She ensured all feeds were working properly, then set the app to alert her to any movement detected in her yard. Prepared as she could be, Evelyn left her office and rejoined Catherine and Lily in the living room, where they were watching a cooking competition show with the distracted air of people whose minds were elsewhere. "Anyone hungry?" Evelyn asked brightly. "I thought we could order pizza again. Keep it simple." "Sounds good to me," Catherine replied a bit too quickly. "Lily?" "Whatever." The teenager shrugged, eyes fixed on the television screen. Evelyn placed the order, then excused herself to take a shower. In the bathroom, with the water running to cover any sound, she activated the voice recorder in her pocket and spoke quietly into it. "This is Evelyn Parker. It's Saturday, April 15th. I am recording this as documentation of a conspiracy against me involving my sister, Catherine Wells, my niece, Lily Wells, and my neighbor, Alan Mercer. Last night I overheard them discussing plans to steal my identity and drain my financial accounts. I believe they may also be planning something more sinister, based on references to insurance involving a bag of hair that Lily has been instructed to plant in my bedroom. I have contacted Officer Hernandez of the Millfield Police Department, who will be arriving at 9 p.m. tonight. In the meantime, I am gathering evidence and maintaining the pretense that I suspect nothing." She paused, then added, "If anything happens to me, this recording, along with video evidence from my home security system, and changes to my financial accounts made early this morning, should provide a starting point for investigation." Evelyn stopped the recording and tucked the device back into her pocket. She finished her shower quickly, dressed in comfortable clothes suitable for whatever the evening might bring, and returned downstairs just as the pizza delivery arrived. Dinner was another exercise in pretense. Evelyn chatted about neutral topics, deliberately keeping the conversation light. She noticed that Catherine checked her phone frequently, a tense anticipation in her sister's demeanor that grew more pronounced as the evening progressed. At 7:42 p.m., Catherine's phone buzzed with an incoming text. She glanced at it, then looked up with an odd expression, a mixture of relief and anxiety. "Everything okay?" Evelyn asked innocently. "Fine," Catherine said, a beat too quickly. "Just a colleague asking about a department meeting next week." Evelyn nodded, pretending to accept the obvious lie. She rose and began clearing the plates from the coffee table where they had been eating. "I think I'll make some tea. Anyone else want some?" Neither Catherine nor Lily responded, both suddenly absorbed in a tense silence that filled the room like smoke. Evelyn had just entered the kitchen when her own phone vibrated in her pocket, an alert from her security system. Movement detected at the front gate. She pulled out her phone, casually, as if checking a text message, and opened the security app. The camera feed showed a shadowy figure at her front gate, too distant to identify clearly, but about the right size and shape to be Alan Mercer. Right on cue, the landline phone in the kitchen rang. Evelyn answered it, already knowing what to expect. "Hello, Ms. Parker?" The voice was disguised, low and raspy. "I've been watching you. I know you're home. I know you have guests. I've left a little gift for you at your front gate. You might want to check it before someone else finds it." The line went dead before she could respond. Evelyn stood for a moment, phone in hand, admiring the theatricality of it all. They had certainly planned this well. The anonymous call, the gift at the gate, all designed to lure her outside while Lily accessed her office again. She returned to the living room, her expression carefully composed into one of concern. "Everything okay?" Catherine asked, her tone just a shade too eager. "Who was that?" "Wrong number, I think," Evelyn said dismissively. Then, as if struck by a sudden thought, she glanced toward the front window. "Though, I thought I saw someone at the gate when I was in the kitchen. Probably nothing, but I should check." "I'll come with you," Catherine offered immediately, standing up. "No, no." Evelyn waved her back down. It's probably just kids playing pranks. I'll be right back. She slipped on a light jacket. The spring evening had grown cool, and made a show of checking that her phone was in her pocket. Won't be long, she assured them, then headed out the front door. As soon as she was outside, Evelyn activated the voice recorder in her pocket again. Then, instead of heading directly to the front gate, she circled around to the side of the house, positioning herself beneath the living room window. Through the partially open blinds, she could see Catherine and Lily, their heads close together in urgent conversation. "Now's our chance," Lily was saying, her voice faintly audible through the glass. "I'll check the office while you keep watch." "I don't like this, Lily," Catherine replied, anxiety clear in her tone. "Maybe we should stop. This has gone too far. Mom, we've talked about this. It's just money. Money that should have been yours anyway. Aunt Evelyn doesn't deserve it. She didn't even really take care of Grandma. She hired nurses for most of it and just supervised. The casual rewriting of history, Evelyn had indeed hired part-time nursing help, but had still provided the bulk of their mother's care herself, was delivered with such conviction that Evelyn wondered if Lily actually believed it. "That's not true," Catherine protested weakly. "Your aunt sacrificed a lot to care for your grandmother. I should have helped more." "Well, it's too late for that now," Lily dismissed. "Look, Alan says this is our last chance. After tonight we'll have everything we need and we never have to do this again. Just keep Aunt Evelyn outside for at least 15 minutes. I'll do the rest." There was a moment of silence, then Catherine sighed. 15 minutes. Then we're done with all this. "Promise," Lily agreed, but Evelyn could hear the insincerity in her niece's voice. Evelyn watched as Lily hurried from the living room, presumably heading upstairs to the office, while Catherine remained seated, her posture tense with obvious misgivings. Moving quickly but quietly, Evelyn made her way to the front gate. As expected, a small package sat on the ground just outside. She picked it up, a padded envelope, unsealed. Inside was a woman's nightgown cut into pieces, with what appeared to be red paint splashed across it to simulate blood. It was an amateur attempt at intimidation, but effectively creepy nonetheless. Evelyn returned the nightgown to the envelope and carried it back toward the house, making sure to approach the front door with slow, deliberate steps that would be visible from the living room windows. She entered the house to find Catherine exactly where she had left her, though her sister's tense posture and too bright smile suggested she was forcing herself to appear casual. "What was it?" Catherine asked, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. Evelyn held up the envelope. "Some kind of sick joke. A nightgown cut up and splashed with red paint. I should call the police." "What?" Catherine stood, genuine alarm mixing with her performative concern. "Are you sure that's necessary? It's probably just neighborhood kids like you said. Kids don't leave cut-up clothing with fake blood on people's gates," Evelyn countered. "This is threatening behavior. I'm calling the police." She moved toward the phone, watching as panic flickered across Catherine's face. "Wait," her sister said quickly. "Let's think about this. It's Saturday night. The police will take forever to come for something like this, and it will just upset Lily." Evelyn paused, pretending to consider this. "You're right. Where is Lily anyway?" "Bathroom," Catherine said immediately. "Upset stomach. Too much pizza." Evelyn nodded, suppressing a smile at the transparent lie. "I should check on her. She seemed fine at dinner." "No." Catherine moved to block her path to the stairs. "I mean, she said she wanted to be left alone. You know how teenagers are about their privacy." "True," Evelyn conceded. "Well, in that case, I think I'll make that tea I was talking about earlier. Want some?" Catherine relaxed fractionally. "Sure." In the kitchen, Evelyn filled the kettle and set it on the stove, then glanced at her phone. The security app showed Lily in her office, methodically going through her desk drawers. The girl was thorough. Evelyn had to give her that. The doorbell rang, startling both women. "Are you expecting someone?" Catherine asked, tension returning to her voice. "No," Evelyn said, feigning confusion. She glanced at her watch. 8:52 p.m. Officer Hernandez was early. She moved to the front door, Catherine trailing anxiously behind her. Through the peephole, she could see Officer Hernandez standing on her porch, dressed in civilian clothes as she had requested. Evelyn opened the door. "Officer Hernandez, thank you for coming." The policeman nodded, his expression professional but curious. "Ms. Parker, you said you had evidence regarding the intrusions you reported." "Yes. Please come in." Evelyn stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. She noted how Catherine had frozen in the hallway, her face draining of color. "This is my sister, Catherine Wells," Evelyn introduced. "Catherine, this is Officer Hernandez. He's been helping me with the break-in situation. Nice to meet you." Catherine managed, her voice faint. "Evie, I should check on Lily. Actually, I'd like both you and Lily to join us for this conversation, Evelyn said pleasantly. It concerns all of us. Would you mind getting her? We'll wait in the living room. Catherine hesitated, clearly torn between wanting to warn her daughter and not wanting to appear suspicious by refusing. Finally, she nodded stiffly and headed for the stairs. Evelyn led Officer Hernandez into the living room, where they both took seats. Thank you for coming so quickly, she said, and for the discretion. You mentioned concrete evidence. Hernandez reminded her, getting straight to the point. And suspects? Yes. Evelyn reached into her pocket and withdrew the voice recorder. I have recorded conversations implicating my sister, my 15-year-old niece, and my neighbor, Alan Mercer, in a conspiracy to steal my identity and drain my financial accounts. They've been systematically gathering my personal and financial information over several visits. Officer Hernandez's expression shifted from polite skepticism to focused attention. That's a serious accusation, Ms. Parker, especially involving family members. I'm aware, Evelyn said grimly, and I wouldn't make it without evidence. She was about to press play on the recorder when hurried footsteps on the stairs announced Catherine's return. Her sister burst into the living room, panic evident in every line of her body. Lily's not upstairs, she announced, her voice tight with fear. She's not in the house at all. Her window is open. I think she climbed out. Evelyn reached for her phone and checked the security app. The camera feed showed her office was indeed empty now. Another camera caught a glimpse of a figure running across the backyard toward the gate. Lily, making her escape. She's heading for Mercer's house, Evelyn said, rising to her feet. Officer Hernandez, my niece has stolen financial documents from my office. She's working with my neighbor, Alan Mercer, who lives at 42 Maple Drive, directly behind this property. Hernandez stood as well, his professional demeanor fully engaged now. Ms. Parker, wait here. I'll call for backup and... There's no time, Evelyn interrupted. Lily has information that could allow them to drain my accounts tonight. We need to catch her before she delivers it to Mercer. Catherine had gone deathly pale. Evelyn, what are you talking about? Lily wouldn't... Save it, Catherine. Evelyn snapped, patience finally exhausted. I heard you both last night planning with Mercer. I followed Lily to his workshop. I have recordings, security footage, everything. It's over. For a moment, Catherine looked as though she might continue to deny everything. Then her shoulders slumped and she covered her face with her hands. Oh God, what have I done? Officer Hernandez looked between the sisters, processing this development. I'm calling for backup, he decided, pulling out his phone. Ms. Wells, you'll need to come to the station to make a statement. But first, we need to locate your daughter and this Mercer individual. While Hernandez made his call, Evelyn approached her sister. Why, Catherine? Was it really just about the money? About Mom's inheritance? Catherine lowered her hands, her face streaked with tears. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Alan approached me after Mom's funeral, said he specialized in helping people recover assets they were entitled to. He made it sound so reasonable. Said you had taken advantage of Mom, manipulated her into changing her will. That's not true, Evelyn said quietly. Mom changed her will because I was the one taking care of her. You know that. I do now, Catherine admitted, her voice breaking. But I was so angry, so jealous of how you always seemed to do everything right. The perfect daughter, the perfect sister. And then there was Lily's college to think about and my mortgage. It seemed like an easy solution. Just take a little of what should have been mine anyway. And you involved your daughter in this? The disgust in Evelyn's voice was unmistakable. Catherine winced. That was Alan's idea. Said a teenage girl would be less suspicious. I never should have agreed. But Lily was so eager. She's always been jealous of you too, of your success, your perfect house. She convinced me it was okay. Officer Hernandez finished his call and rejoined them. Backup is on the way. They'll approach Mercer's property from the front while we go through the back. Ms. Wells, you'll stay here. Catherine nodded mutely, all fight gone out of her. Evelyn led Officer Hernandez through her house to the back door. Mercer has a workshop in his backyard, she explained as they crossed her lawn toward the gate. That's where they meet. That's where Lily will be heading. They moved quickly but cautiously through the gate and across the adjoining properties until they reached Mercer's backyard. The light was on in the workshop, just as it had been the night before. Hernandez held up a hand, signaling Evelyn to stay back. Let me handle this, he whispered, drawing his weapon. Evelyn nodded and retreated slightly, watching as the officer approached the workshop. Before he reached it, however, the door burst open, and Lily emerged, running at full tilt, directly toward Evelyn. The girl skidded to a stop when she saw her aunt, her eyes widening with shock. "Aunt Evelyn? What are—" From inside the workshop came a crash, followed by shouting. Officer Hernandez changed direction, rushing toward the commotion. Evelyn fixed her gaze on her niece. "It's over, Lily. The police know everything." Lily's expression cycled rapidly through shock, fear, and then settled into a defiant glare. "You don't understand anything. He said we deserved it, that Mom deserved it, that you had stolen from us first. And you believed him? A stranger over your own family? He's not a stranger." Lily spat. "He's my dad." The revelation hit Evelyn like a physical blow. "What? Mom never told you? She had an affair with Alan right after I was born." "Dad? I mean, the man I grew up calling Dad. Found out when I was 3. That's why they divorced. Alan wanted to be in my life, but Mom wouldn't let him. Until now." The pieces suddenly fell into place. Mercer's detailed knowledge of their family dynamics, his personal investment in the scheme, his manipulation of both Catherine and Lily. It wasn't just about money. It was about revenge. Before Evelyn could respond, there was another shout from the workshop, followed by the distinctive sound of a gunshot. Both Evelyn and Lily flinched, instinctively ducking. "Get down!" Evelyn hissed, grabbing Lily's arm and pulling her behind a large oak tree at the edge of the yard. For once the teenager didn't resist, her bravado evaporating in the face of real danger. "What's happening?" she whispered, voice trembling. "I don't know," Evelyn admitted, keeping a protective arm around her niece despite everything. They didn't have to wait long for an answer. The workshop door banged open again, and Alan Mercer stumbled out, clutching his shoulder, which was darkening with what appeared to be blood. Behind him came Officer Hernandez, gun trained on Mercer's back. "On the ground now," Hernandez ordered. "Hands where I can see them." Mercer swayed on his feet, looking around wildly until his gaze landed on Lily and Evelyn, partially hidden behind the tree. For a moment, something like regret flickered across his face. Then his expression hardened, and he reached into his jacket with his good arm. "Don't do it!" Hernandez shouted. "Drop your weapon!" But Mercer was beyond warnings. He pulled out a small handgun and raised it, not toward the officer, but toward Evelyn and Lily. Evelyn shoved her niece fully behind the tree, shielding her with her own body just as 2 shots rang out in rapid succession. There was a moment of terrible silence, then the heavy thud of a body hitting the ground. "Stay here," Evelyn ordered Lily, who was now sobbing quietly. She peered around the tree to see Mercer lying motionless on the grass, Officer Hernandez approaching him cautiously, gun still drawn. "Ms. Parker, are you and the girl all right?" Hernandez called, kneeling beside Mercer to check for a pulse. "We're fine," Evelyn called back, her voice steadier than she felt. "Is he—" "He's alive," Hernandez confirmed. "Hit his shoulder and grazed his side. He'll survive to face charges." He pulled out handcuffs and secured Mercer's wrists behind his back, then reached for his radio to update the approaching backup units. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Evelyn turned back to Lily, who had slumped to the ground at the base of the tree, her face buried in her hands. Despite everything, the betrayal, the schemes, the hurtful words she had overheard, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a surge of pity for her niece. Lily was still just a teenager, manipulated by adults who should have known better. "He told me he just wanted what was rightfully his," Lily sobbed. "He said he wanted to be part of my life, to be a real father. He said we'd be a family." Evelyn crouched beside her. "And your mother? What did she want?" Lily looked up, her tear-streaked face appearing much younger than it had the night before, when she had spoken so coldly about her aunt. She just wanted to make things right. She felt guilty about Grandma, about keeping me away from Alan. He convinced her this was the way to fix everything. The front yard was now filled with the flashing lights of police cars. Officers were securing the scene, one attending to Mercer's wounds, while others began to cordon off the area with yellow tape. "Come on," Evelyn said, helping Lily to her feet. "We need to join your mother. The police will have questions for all of us." As they walked back toward Evelyn's house, Lily hesitated. "Are you going to press charges against Mom? Against me?" Evelyn sighed, the weight of the night's revelations heavy on her shoulders. "I don't know yet, Lily. What you both did, what you tried to do, it was wrong. There have to be consequences." "I know," Lily whispered. "I'm sorry. I don't expect you to believe me, but I am." They reached the gate to Evelyn's yard and passed through it. Catherine was standing on the back deck, her face a mask of fear and guilt as she watched them approach. "Lily!" she cried, rushing forward to embrace her daughter. "Are you hurt?" I heard gunshots. She's fine, Evelyn assured her sister. Mercer isn't, but he'll live. Catherine pulled back from Lily to look at Evelyn, her expression pleading. Evie, I know I don't deserve it, but please. Not now, Catherine. Evelyn cut her off. The police will want statements from all of us. There will be plenty of time for apologies and explanations later. As she led her sister and niece toward the officers waiting at the front of the house, Evelyn felt a strange sense of calm settling over her. The nightmare of the past months was over. The trap she had set, not the childish contraption with blue dye, but the careful gathering of evidence, the strategic planning, had worked, though not in the way she had originally intended. She had caught her intruders, exposed their scheme, but the truth had brought revelations she could never have anticipated. Family secrets, long-buried resentments, a complex web of relationships that had festered in darkness until they had erupted into this night of confrontation and violence. There would be hard decisions ahead, questions of forgiveness, of justice, of how to move forward with the knowledge that the people she should have been able to trust the most had betrayed her so completely. But for now, Evelyn was simply grateful that no one had been killed, that the trap that had been set for her neighbor, the trap her niece had entered first, had ultimately led not to tragedy, but to truth. And truth, painful as it might be, was always preferable to the comforting lies she had been living with for far too long. The next time someone set a trap in Evelyn Parker's life, she would be ready. Because the most dangerous traps, she had learned, were not the ones made of tripwires and blue dye, but the ones woven from secrets, resentment, and the corrosive power of believing you deserve what belongs to someone else. Some traps you set for others, and some, without realizing it, you set for yourself. Welcome to Raven Reports. Remember, the story you've just heard is purely fictional.